June 1815. A muddy field in Belgium. Cannons thunder, horses scream, smoke hangs thick like a curtain between life and death. It was all supposed to end here, and it almost did. But what if it had gone differently? What if Napoleon had won at Waterloo? This wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point in world history. If Napoleon had won, Europe wouldn't be the only thing that changed. The 21st century might look nothing like ours. History could have been rewritten. And today we'll show you how. By 1815, Napoleon had already been exiled, but he escaped Elba, marched through France in triumph, and rebuilt his army in just days. But two great powers stood in his way: Britain and Prussia. Their mission was clear: end Napoleon, once and for all. They met on a field near a small Belgian village, Waterloo. The battle lasted a single day, but it would decide the fate of a continent. Historically, Napoleon lost, but the gap between victory and defeat was razor thin. On that battlefield, a single step could have changed everything. What if Marshal Grouchy had arrived in time? What if Ney's cavalry hadn't charged too soon? Let's rewrite history. Imagine this: Napoleon wins. In our alternate timeline, Marshal Grouchy intercepts the Prussians and delays them by several crucial hours. Meanwhile, Marshal Ney strikes the center of the Anglo-Allied line. Wellington's forces retreat. The field belongs to Napoleon. Panic hits London. Newspapers scream one headline: Napoleon victorious. Markets crash. Uprisings erupt in Italy and Germany in support of France. The map of Europe trembles. But Napoleon knows military victory isn't enough. He needs a political one too. He offers peace, but not surrender. He's ready to negotiate on his own terms. Napoleon returns to Paris not just as a conqueror, but as a reformer. He knows that stability matters more than glory. He builds a federation of loyal states: Northern Italy, the Confederation of the Rhine, a semi-autonomous Poland. This is a new empire. Instead of dictatorship, a new constitution, a balance between republic and monarchy. The Napoleonic Code spreads across the continent. In Britain, a political crisis unfolds. The public is exhausted by war. Parliament demands change. Wellington is under pressure. He resigns. And the coalition begins to fracture. Russia is the first to leave the war. Peace is signed. The empire survives. The defeat at Waterloo sends shockwaves through Britain. Society splits between fear and fury. Chartists and radicals demand reform. Their slogan: "If France can do it, why can't we?" An uprising erupts in Manchester. Troops fire on protesters. This isn't 18th century Europe, this is 19th century Britain. The monarchy feels the pressure. For the first time in a century, one word echoes through Buckingham Palace: republic. To hold the country together, the government makes concessions. The 1816 Constitutional Act is born, a compromise on the edge of revolution. Britain doesn't collapse, but it changes forever. The irony? Napoleon becomes the spark of British democracy. Without Napoleon's defeat, the Congress of Vienna never happens. The old order collapses. Austria loses its grip. Prussia never becomes the heart of a unified Germany. Instead, a Franco-centric Europe takes shape. Revolutions ignite in Spain, Bavaria, and the Papal States. They follow the Napoleonic path: modernization and reform. With Napoleon's victory, the Pope loses his role as Europe's arbiter. The Church no longer rules, it obeys. The Papal States become a secular territory. Rome turns from a city of religion into a capital of progress. Napoleon abolishes the Inquisition and institutes secular education. Universities become more important than cathedrals. Catholicism doesn't vanish, but makes room for a new order: rational, legal, civil. Across Europe, churches lose their monopoly on power. Their bells no longer command, they simply remind. Europe becomes a mosaic of constitutional monarchies and republics. Nationalism rises, but under France's shadow. French becomes the language of law, diplomacy, and science. It pushes English into the background on the world stage. And across the ocean, America watches, carefully, curiously, and with growing unease. A tense silence falls over Washington. A French victory means old Europe is no longer predictable. President Monroe and his advisors debate what matters more now, neutrality or containment. The Monroe Doctrine hardens. Europe must stay out of the Americas. But in practice, it's not that simple. French influence grows in Latin America. Mexico, Colombia, Brazil all become arenas of diplomatic chess. America doesn't go to war, but it builds a navy. The goal isn't independence anymore, it's balance. France dominates the old world. The US prepares for the future in the new. It's cold diplomacy before the term existed. Would there have been a World War I? Maybe not. Without a unified Germany and a bitter France, no rigid power blocks emerge. Colonial tensions might still flare, but not with the same fury, and not with the same alliances. The Ottoman Empire reforms with French advisors. Egypt industrializes half a century earlier. Technology advances quickly, but differently. Railroads and telegraphs become tools of integration, not domination. By 1900, it's Paris, not London or Berlin, that becomes the beating heart of the modern world. By the early 20th century, Paris isn't just the capital of Europe, it's the capital of the future. Not Oxford, but the Sorbonne. Not Newton, but Laplace. France sets the tempo for world science. Medicine, physics, chemistry all evolve under Parisian influence. Even German and Russian scientists publish in French. It's not British tailoring, but French silhouettes that rule fashion. Parisian style becomes the world's dress code. Opera houses, boulevards, cafes, and architecture schools all modeled after Paris, from Buenos Aires to Bombay. Even American artists flock to Montmartre. France becomes more than a country, it becomes an idea. The language of diplomacy? French. The language of science? French. Even Hollywood screenwriters start with bonjour. The world speaks French and thinks like Napoleon, rationally, ambitiously, strategically. Even technology bends to French influence. Paris leads in telegraphs, electricity, and the world's first driving schools. This isn't Pax Britannica. This isn't German science. This is the siècle français, the French century. And all of it because of one day, one field, one victory that could have been. Victory at Waterloo gives France not just control over Europe, but global ambition. A second wave of expansion begins without British or Spanish competition. In North Africa, France solidifies control over Algeria decades earlier. Egypt, with its loyal elite, becomes the gateway to Africa. In Asia, Indochina develops under French protection. Hanoi and Saigon begin to mirror Paris. Britain loses influence in the Caribbean. Haiti rejoins the French system not as a colony, but as a strategic ally. The French Navy becomes a force in the Pacific. Tahiti and New Caledonia turn into projection points, not just exotic outposts. The colonial map of the world turns red not for Britain, but for France. And it's not muskets that win, it's the code. A French victory shatters the old axis of globalization. London is no longer the hub Paris is, and it's not an empire, it's a federation. Financial power shifts, not the city of London, but Lyon and Bordeaux. The French franc becomes the 19th century's reserve currency. Global communication runs through French cables. Telegraph lines stretch from Paris to Shanghai and Lima. Even the system of time zones realigns around Paris. Greenwich? Forget it. The new zero runs along the Seine. World fairs, exhibitions, scientific congresses, they all happen in France. The world learns from her, travels to her, depends on her. This isn't just globalization. It's the Francophication of the planet. The world unites in French terms. History often balances on a knife's edge. One day and a whole century shifts. At Waterloo, mud slowed Napoleon, a delayed cavalry, one corps that never arrived. But if he had won, Europe might speak French and rule very differently. The 21st century would have grown from different values, different borders, different memories. The past doesn't change, but it reminds us things could have been different. History could have been rewritten, and today we showed you how.